quote, "You are full of shit. Your point is the equivalent of saying, if you celebrate Halloween, you are fine with witchcraft being taught in schools and special political rights for Wiccans." Okay, just pause. Would he say that to a Muslim who was trying to get rid of Ramadan? To an ex-Muslim? Someone who was born Muslim and is now atheist? No. You would never insult someone who is openly struggling to raise their children as atheist non-Muslims in a Muslim majority. So you would never say that to them. You say that to me. Atheism is the laziest movement in the world. Secular humanism is the laziest, most fatuous, most self-indulgent movement in the world. And that's why it's been failing to make progress in the last 20 years. Every other ideology calling for social change is aware that if you want change, and if you're the one to make it happen, you are going to be made uncomfortable by it. And the atheists and secular humanists have a very fatuous view of the world. That the world is going to change and that everyone else is going to be made uncomfortable except them. Because they're right. And they think that being right means you get to sit back and just kind of congratulate yourself and throw conferences and have meetings where you pat yourself on the back and you live your whole life in a constant cycle of self-congratulation because you feel morally superior to the high school principal you grew up with. Because you feel morally superior to the nuns and priests and monks who talked to you when you were a child. You feel intellectually superior to your own parents and your own grandparents who believed in a religion you no longer believe in. And you see your role now as sitting back passively and laughing as the rest of the world catches up with you and this brilliant insight you've had into reality, that there is no God, etc., etc. Why do you think you guys are losing? Why do you think gay rights made so much progress in the last 20, 30 years and you guys made none? Why do you think veganism made so much progress in the last 20, 30 years and you guys made none? I hate to tell you this, guys. Compared to communism, and I'm an anti-communist, completely anti-communist, but I've got a degree in political science. I've spent many years of my life studying communism. Communism is still a major, powerful, influential ideology in the world. It's still making moves. It's still impacting millions of people's lives. Even the communists know if they want social change, they've got to get uncomfortable. They've got to get out there and start producing new meanings. They've got to get out there and write their own storybooks and comic books and songs. You wouldn't believe how many new songs the communists come up with all over the world. India, China, Russia, everywhere. And still to this day, they're still doing it. They're involved in cultural production and in trying to raise their children to repeat those memes, those meanings, to challenge and replace the culture they were born into, to create what they think is a better world. And that's what the vegans are doing. That's what the gay rights people have been doing. And there's a fundamentally sick and self-indulgent attitude that I see amongst the atheist activists, the secular activists, that I think is based on a sense of intellectual superiority that's completely unfounded. I conducted a little tiny social experiment over the last several weeks. By email and by Twitter message, I reached out to people who had about the same number of total viewers I had on YouTube, not famous, internationally successful atheists like Richard Dawkins, not people who are on such a towering scale of fame and money and influence that they wouldn't answer an email from me. People on about the same level I'm at, in terms of having a few thousand regular viewers, doing this as a hobby to whatever extent, on a podcast or on YouTube. And I reached out to them saying, hey, look, you know what? I have a 5-year-old daughter, and I really don't want to raise her celebrating Christmas. And I look around, I don't see any other atheists, secular humanists, I don't see any other activists taking on the challenge of providing a set of songs and stories and rituals, providing something more meaningful to their children, to the next generation, than what they've got right now. And if you think repeating a ritual and a song again and again and again, year after year, in school, and playing over the loudspeakers at the shopping center, and acting that out, if you think that doesn't impact your children when they're growing up, why don't you just raise your children secular Muslim or secular Hindu? Why is it that atheists and secularists, they have this unique blind spot for Christianity as a cultural tradition and not for any other slightly unfamiliar cultural tradition? They don't see Buddhist rituals as secular, nor Hindu, nor Muslim. Just the rituals of precisely the religion they claim to be in a state of rebellion against. Okay? And this is the sense in which you guys are so much more fatuous than vegans, gay rights activists, communists. You're not willing to make yourself even slightly uncomfortable, challenging yourself to write a new story, to come up with a new song, to offer something more meaningful for the generation to come, and to challenge the hegemony. This is a case where we really should use the hegemony. The hegemony of Christian cultural traditions, in as much as we can even recognize Christian cultural traditions as something separable from Christianity. So I'd get these angry messages back, totally unsympathetic messages, that would always say, quote, Christmas is a cultural tradition. I replied to one of them saying, regarding, quote, Christmas is a cultural tradition, would you make the same excuse for an Islamic holiday? Would you let your children participate in worshiping a fragment of a meteorite in Mecca on the grounds that it's just cultural, quote unquote? How about animal sacrifice within Islam or within any religion? How would you do that? I have not had a single one of these people reply on topic to those questions. None of them have actually answered those questions. They've sent me insults before. They've sent me insults after. They've told me how completely insane I am to want to challenge and replace Christmas as a cultural tradition, but they don't actually answer those questions. Now, this is not hypothetical. When I ask, would you make the same excuse for Islamic holiday? Some of these same people I wrote to. So here's one. Again, he has a YouTube channel and a podcast and so on, like most others. This guy you see on screen now, he's participating in the hashtag when I was a Muslim. And he says, to all ex-Muslims, please don't stop being open about leaving Islam. You're not alone, and people like you. You guys are out there calling on Muslims to get real uncomfortable and to reject the cultural traditions of the oppressive societies they live in. Do you know how hard it is to not celebrate Ramadan when you're in Saudi Arabia, Malaysia, Indonesia? Do you know how hard it is to be openly non-Muslim when your whole family is Muslim in a Muslim-majority country? Pretty much any Muslim majority. Of course, some are easier than others. Turkey is a lot easier than Saudi Arabia, but we're not going to get into details. You're asking for quite a high level of courage and effort in repudiating and refusing to participate in Ramadan and all the other Muslim festivals and traditions for ex-Muslims. And you're celebrating them coming on Twitter and talking about rejecting Islam and what happens to them when they're Jews. And when I do it with Christianity, when I say, hey, I'm going to draw the line and I'm going to refuse to be a part of Christmas, I'm going to make this little bit of an effort to offer my daughter something meaningful, something more, something positive instead of Christmas. I'm going to write new stories and new songs. I'm going to try to offer her something better than Christmas and something better than the X-Men and Batman and Curious George. I'm going to take on that challenge. All of you, 100% of you, wrote back with insults telling me that I was crazy. Okay. So here's a reply from Noel Plum. He's not famous, but like myself, he has a YouTube channel. He has about the same number of total views on YouTube that I have. I think he's been on YouTube for about the same length of time I have, too. And he replies, quote, "You are full of shit. Your point is the equivalent of saying, if you celebrate Halloween, you are fine with witchcraft being taught in schools and special political rights for Wiccans." Okay, just pause. Would he say that to a Muslim who was trying to get rid of Ramadan? To an ex-Muslim? Someone who was born Muslim and is now atheist? No. You would never insult someone who is openly struggling to raise their children as atheist non-Muslims in a Muslim majority state. You would never say that to them. You say that to me. And you say that to me because you're compensating for your own hypocrisy, fatuousness, and laziness. No. It's equivalent to saying people who celebrate Hitler's birthday are Nazi sympathizers. It's equivalent to saying people who celebrate the life and accomplishments of Stalin are Stalinists. If you actually opposed Christianity, don't celebrate Christmas. Not one person has replied to me honestly and directly on topic. I've had insults. I've had them write back saying how crazy I am. I have not had one person really write back on topic this way. This was, again, a reply that involved him and one other YouTuber podcaster. You can see there who I'm replying to. Your position is, quote, Christmas is a cultural celebration, close quote. They gave the same excuses I've heard a million times before. I saw on Reddit also, talked to some so-called atheist activists on Reddit, where they say, oh, it goes back to Yule, it's pre-Christian, and it's just a cultural tradition. There's no Christ in Christmas, this kind of nonsense. Okay, your position is Christmas is a cultural celebration. The Gadamai festival is a cultural celebration. That's a festival in India, Nepal, actually. I don't know if maybe the adjacent part of India, but mostly famous in Nepal rather than India, involves slaughtering huge numbers of cows, animal sacrifice. The Gadamai festival is a cultural celebration. Ramadan also is a cultural celebration. Communists commemorating Lenin, Stalin, and Mao. Cultural celebrations. Period. Stand for something versus fall for anything. Period. Guys, the particular excuses these so-called atheist activists made are not worth talking about. What's worth talking about is the motivation behind them. What motivates them to make these excuses? What is it really you're making excuses for? Noel Plum again, quote, but this equating celebrating Christmas to celebrating Stalin's birthday is absurd. My family misses out on nothing culturally by ignoring Stalin's birthday. That is why I say it is way more like Halloween. It is a social event. Well, yeah, if you lived in a majority communist society. Anyway, look, a lot of these replies also, it's very obvious I'm sincere. I have one of the full-length letters I wrote to these podcasts. I've posted it on my blog. I'll give you guys the link below this video. It's only, 10 sentences long. It's really pretty brief. But there was no reason to treat me like a troll. There's no reason to treat me like I'm joking. And I've sent that link to these people too, saying, hey, I'm a father of a 5-year-old daughter. This is the challenge I'm taking on. How about you? And one of the main things I've noticed is none of them have anything of substance to say back to me. And the main breaking point is where they just recognize that I'm not joking, that I am being sincere. So here's my reply to this guy. And I think this was the end of the discussion for him because he didn't have anything of substance to say on the points being raised. Quote, I've lived in 2 different communist countries and 1 ex-communist country. My parents were communists. I'm really being sincere in this discussion, : you aren't. Period. I'm really, sincerely trying to prepare an alternative to Christmas for my daughter this year. I'm not a troll. Make all the excuses you want to. You wouldn't regard someone in Saudi Arabia or Jerusalem who just conforms to the dominant religion with the excuse of, quote, it's only cultural or it's only traditional. As an atheist or a secular activist, either you live up to your own standards or you don't.